talking about happiness. Well, fulfillment. You derive happiness from fulfillment. And I thought this conversation between Ben Shapiro and Vodi Buckham, we've had on the show before. He's a dean of a Christian college in Zambia by way of Los Angeles, and he's really one of the most powerful Christian speakers out there. If you haven't checked out his sermons, you should. Or and check out his most recent book, Fault Lines. You should do that too. Vodi Beckham talking about sort of men in crisis, his perspective. We struggle in the current culture to define what a woman is, or at least some of us do. Some Supreme Court justices do. What does it mean to be a man?
When you take manhood and try to look at manhood in isolation, you've already got a problem. The God who created us, he created us male and female. And so you cannot understand maleness apart from femaleness, right? You have to understand what it means to be a man, first of all, by what it means to be made in the image of God, and second of all, by what it means to be made as this counterpart to a woman. And this idea that God created us to be priest, and prophet, and provider and protector. God designed us that way. And when you take us away from that, we're bigger than women, we're stronger than women, we have all of these things that allow us to take advantage of women. They get pregnant, we don't. We can just walk away from it and, leave them with that. There are so many things that if left unchecked, they do allow for this toxic version of masculinity. And so what we have to call men back to is this understanding of manhood that is outside of themselves. And you being a man is not just about who you think you are or even who you want to be. It is about you pointing back to the one who made you. It's about you pointing back to the purpose for which he made you. And it's about you pointing back to the relationship that he intends for you to have with the opposite sex. One of the things you mentioned is men not wanting to be married. That's an incredibly important part of the picture of what it means to be a man. This idea that we would be in a relationship, that we would be the head of a household, that we would be, like I said, priest, prophet, provider, protector within that context. All of that gives us not only purpose, but it gives us greater understanding of what masculinity is all about. And it also keeps it in check and it protects women. That's the irony of all of this. People are fighting against the patriarchy. People are fighting against marriage. People are fighting against traditional roles. And the result is you leave women unprotected and you leave men unchecked to do whatever they will with those women.
So unprotected and unchecked. That sounds like a bad recipe, especially for happiness for either side. For more on that, we're pleased to be joined by Gad Saad. He's the evolutionary psychologist and professor in the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University in Canada. He's also the host of the YouTube series, The Saad Truth, and author of the new book, as we previewed, The Saad Truth About Happiness, 8 Secrets for Leading the Good Life, which is available now, so pick it up. Gad Saad, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Nice to be with you again, Dan.
What do you make of what Vodi Beckham had to say?
Well, of course, as an evolutionary psychologist, it is fundamental quest to study evolved sex differences, right? We are a sexually dimorphic species, which is fancy language for the fact that there are 2 phenotypes, male and female, and we are similar on many things, but quite different on others. And the things that we are different on stem from differing evolutionary pressures. So, for example, when it comes to mating, men and women do not incur the same costs when they make a mate choice. Precisely what the gentleman said in your piece. Women get pregnant, not men. Therefore, the minimal obligatory parental investment that is required of women is extraordinarily greater than it is for men. And that's why we see many of the sex differences that we see. And so once you start creating a narrative, as we have today, where, the most fundamental features of our biology are being questioned, our reality are being questioned, that can't lead to a happy state. And that's why I originally wrote, if you remember a few years ago, The Parasitic Mind, where I was
Yeah.
talking about how idea pathogens can parasitize our mind. And so being grounded in reality is a sure pathway to happiness.
But I don't know if Vodi mentioned it. I think a big change that I've noticed over the years is that women need to let their men be men. Because we're raised being told, oh, you can be independent. You don't need a man to make you happy. But in actuality, I think you do at some level. And I think that women need to let their men do things that they used to be able to do.
Right. So I wrote an article several years ago on my Psychology Today column called, I think the title was, Is Toxic Masculinity a Valid Concept? And there what I was arguing is exactly to your point, Amy. I was saying that, look, both men and women look in particular attributes in one another, again, precisely for key evolutionary reasons. So around the world, studies have been done in extraordinarily varied societies, and we find the exact same things that men desire in an ideal male, and vice versa. There is no culture where men recurringly prefer to mate with postmenopausal women more than 25-year-old women. There is no culture where women say, give me an apathetic, lazy, unemployed guy who shows no ambition, who is not willing to protect me. That gets my juices flowing, right? So these mating preferences are universal precisely because they solve recurring evolutionary problems. And so to pathologize half of humanity called man, to pathologize masculinity is, again, not a good pathway to happiness.
Well, when you in this new book, the Saad Truth about happiness, you talk about living the life you want, not necessarily the life expected of you. Uh, Build that out for us. What does that mean?
Right. So in one of the ending chapters, I talk about the psychology of regret. And one of actually my former professors in my PhD, his name is Thomas Gilovich, differentiated between two types of regret. Regret due to action. So I regret that I cheated on my wife and now my marriage is over. Versus regret due to inaction. I wish I would have, pursued my interests in the arts. That's what I should have been. And it turns out that over the long term, the most looming regrets that we feel are those due to inaction. And so I wake up at 80 years old. I became an accountant because my dad was an accountant and his dad was an accountant. But the reality is I always wanted to be an artist. And now this looming regret, the inauthentic life that I have lived because I was adhering to other people's expectations will haunt me in my last years. And so to live an authentic life is to recognize what will make you happy, whether it be professionally, socially, whatever it is, and to the best of your abilities to live it. Because there's nothing worse than sitting on the proverbial porch when you're 85 years old and look back and say, "What if I should have? I could have."
So you think true happiness is possible?
I do think true happiness is possible. So the general research shows that roughly 50% of our differences in happiness scores come from our genes, right? So some of us have sunny dispositions, others have less sunny dispositions. But the good news there is that still leaves 50% open for, up for grabs, right? So the types of choices that we make, which spouse I choose, which profession I pursue, the types of mindsets that we adopt. For example, I talk in the book about adopting a playful mindset in life. I call it, the chapter is titled Life as a Playground. So the types of mindsets that we adopt can move us on the happiness continuum. So irrespective of where you start in terms of your disposition, we could always improve in terms of our happiness.
How important is culture, do you think, in terms of your individual happiness? There was this interesting piece in the Atlantic. I don't get to say that very much anymore. But it's about the de-churching, the great de-churching, which is a book by a scholar from the Keller Center and a teaching pastor and so forth. And they just talk about why people aren't going to church anymore. And one of the arguments is that essentially contemporary America isn't set up to promote mutuality, care, or a common life. It's designed to maximize individual accomplishment as mainly defined by professional or financial success. So it atomizes us and it leaves us not seeing much value in spending the time to have a faith life because all the rewards come from that individual professional and financial success. Is that sort of? I mean, first of all, you have to accept the premise that that's a fair description of our culture. But if it is, how impactful is that culture?
Right. So there is. So I do discuss in the book a whole bunch of correlates to happiness. One of which is religiosity. So to your point, there is a moderate positive correlation between religiosity and happiness, meaning that on average, people who are religious are happier. And again, to your point, that need not be for a supernatural reason. It could be for very earthly reasons. It's because religious people, as you said, are going to have greater communality. They have greater demarcation between the in-group and the out-group. They have greater sense of cohesion. And so for all sorts of earthly reasons, being faith-based is going to bring you a bit more bang for your buck in terms of happiness. That said, though, I'm quick to immediately point out I don't want people who are not, religious to despair that they're doomed to not be as happy. There are all sorts of ways for the people who are not faith-based to also to exhibit reverence to the spiritual, to have awe-inspiring moments, right? I mean, I could meet a random stranger on the street and we can get caught up in an incredible serendipitous 30-minute conversation that allows us to create this, atomized, as you said, communion between us without couching it in a supernatural or in a, faith-based narrative. So yes, religiosity increases our happiness, but I think we can have spiritual experiences void of religion as well.
Now, Dan's 50 or 51. He's not married, but you write in your book that...
Thanks.
Sorry.
The profiling. Yeah, sure.
But you write in your book that marriage is so important to happiness. Can you explain that?
Well, look, again, to draw from the well of evolutionary psychology, humans face a conundrum in the sense that we've both evolved to engage in long-term coupling, i.e. marriage. That's just the scientific term, right? So, and the reason for that is simple, is because we are a biparental species. Human dads invest very heavily in their children, unlike most other mammals. And so it makes perfect sense for nature, for evolution, to have created the mechanisms of attachment between a man and a woman, which is then instantiated via a marriage. Now, here's the conundrum. We've also evolved the desire to stray. So I have a chapter on variety seeking, which includes, food variety seeking, intellectual variety seeking, and also sexual variety seeking. And so, on the one hand, we've evolved a deep desire to be in a monogamous union, but we've also evolved at least the penchant to stray. Now, whether you stray or not depends on each individual's moral compass, but it's a very, very difficult line to cross. And by the way, it's not just men who've evolved a desire for sexual variety. There's all sorts of research that shows that women also experience that instinct, albeit not to the same extent as men. So, being in a long-term union with a partner who's going to, be your biggest champion is a good thing in life, right? I lost tons of weight. I mean, really, I think I lost 86 pounds. I wouldn't have been able to do it without a supportive wife because she was tracking my dietary intakes every day. So having a partner who's your biggest champion is a good thing.
See, I'm from the Mr. Burns school, from The Simpsons, that family, religion, friendship, these are the three demons you have to slay to be successful in business and radio. So that's why maybe that's where I got off track a little bit.
But you're exactly right. I mean, about the friendship part in that, towards the end of the book, I have a quote coming from the Harvard adult development longitudinal study that's been going on, I think, for 80 plus years. And what they found, the number one thing that they found that is relevant in terms of our happiness, our mental health, our physical health, is the quality of relationships that you have. It actually predicts your well-being more than do your cholesterol scores at the age of 50. So if you want to live a long, happy life, it is literally the case that you have to foster those good relationships that you're speaking about, Dan.
All right. So I'm going to keep my friends, and I'm going to consider going on The Bachelor, but I'm not making a commitment yet. Gad Saad, he's an evolutionary psychologist and professor in the John Molson School of Business at Concordia University up there in Strange Brew Land. He's also host of the YouTube series, The Saad Truth, and author of the new book, The Saad Truth About Happiness, 8 Secrets for Leading the Good Life. And he mentioned it. I should have. The Parasitic Mind previous book of his is excellent, so you should pick that up, too, when you pick up The Saad Truth About Happiness. Gad Saad, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Loved our conversation. Cheers.
Thank you, and congratulations on your weight loss. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors in Roselle. Summer is here, which is the ideal time to brighten things up around the house and let the sunshine in. Make the rooms in your house that appear small, dark, or dingy look better and bigger with larger windows or patio doors. Our highly skilled craftsmen can enlarge openings if your space allows. For decades, Woodland has been transforming living spaces with Marvin windows, featuring styles ranging from modern to traditional. Marvin replacement windows and doors can also bring your backyard right into your living space. Ask us about connecting the inside to the outside. When you welcome a Woodland sales expert into your home, you'll get a product expert, a design consultant, a budget hawk, and someone who has your best interest in mind. Our professional services, along with the best products and installation, are why we are proud of our great online reviews. Visit woodlandwindows.com to book your free in-home expert consultation or stop by our showroom at the corner of Lake and Geary in Roselle.
Are you considering a unique way to enhance your investment knowledge this year? Then sign up today for the all-inclusive Eagle Financial Publications Cruise. Along with our trusted partner, The Money Show, we're setting sail this December to explore some of the most beautiful and unspoiled destinations in the Caribbean. But this is no ordinary vacation. It's a chance